Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Half Court Press podcast. I'm Wilson Moore, joined as always by Jon Walker. Been
Yo,
John, pretty eventful couple days of college basketball in the state. Creighton beat the number one team in the country, and Nebraska did something, I mean, based on the trajectory of the season, maybe more unlikely than that, and won a
yeah,
Big Ten game on the road. So lots to talk about today, lots to get through from the last week of college basketball here.
yeah, it's gonna be, I think back to where we were a month ago, and we were just saying, man, we gotta get we gotta get through January. We've got to get through the end of January. And here we are, and things have picked up quite a bit. We expected them to, and and they certainly have. Yeah, that's a good one. Nebraska, yeah, probably more unlikely than knocking off the number one number one team in the country. But no, for sure. How are you, Wilson?
I'm doing well. Yeah. I didn't make the trip to Indiana, unfortunately. So I
The
was writing
return
from my
trip.
what?
The return trip.
The return trip, yes. Yeah, yesterday was exactly 1 year to the day that I moved out of Indiana. So it would have been some nice poetry if I had gone back that day, but didn't make the trip. It would have been about 10 hours. That's a long way to go for 40 minutes of basketball.
Yeah.
Wrote from the couch. Had a nice view on the TV of Nebraska's first win on the road this season in conference play, win over Indiana. How are you, John?
Man, yeah, I'm good. I'm a little sleepy. I don't think I've fully recovered from Tuesday. Um, and Creighton's upset of number one UConn. Late night, earlier morning, kind of, whatever. But either way, didn't watch the back of my eyelids pretty much. Um, but I'm gonna do that here soon before I head to New York this week
New York.
for the St. John's matchup. Kind of so long ways to go for 40 minutes of basketball. I like that. I'm gonna steal it for sure. Long ways to go for 40 minutes of basketball. But I'm good, Wilson.
Yeah, yeah. Well, do you want to just dive into it? I think
Yeah, yeah, man.
we can start on Tuesday night. Creighton welcomes the number one team in the country, the UConn Huskies, into CHI Health Center, and I don't know what you were expecting, John. I was expecting at least a competitive game. I thought Creighton was gonna hang with them. I thought UConn was really talented and UConn was gonna pull away in kind of the final minutes. That was my prediction going in, and that is not what happened.
No, no, it's certainly not. I'm trying to pull up a text that I sent to my girlfriend on Tuesday. You'll get a kick out of it. But no, I mean it was just Creighton was due for a heater like that, I think. They kind of had one in that Butler loss where they put up 98 and still lost. But they were due for a heater. I wasn't sure if it was Tuesday, if it was going to be Tuesday, or if it was going to be sometime as they continue Big East tournament prep. It happened Tuesday. 55% from the field. More importantly, in that 14 threes, shot 50% from deep and just blitzed UConn. I saw somebody do a film breakdown and they were like, this is how Creighton slowed down the number one team in the country. And it wasn't anything that Creighton has not done all year. And that's what stood out to me is they didn't completely deviate from who they were. They knew that they defended well enough in the first meeting in Stores, but they could not score. Well, they got the scoring. The defense kind of came along with it again. I just that is candidly speaking, that's not what I expected. I saw a path to them winning. I saw a path to UConn winning. I did not expect Creighton to win by 20 against the number one team in the country. But you figured something had to give, right? Like Creighton had never beat number one. UConn hadn't won on the road against a ranked opponent since 2014.
That is a crazy
That is,
statistic. I saw that.
they
That is
have two
wild.
national championships
They
in
have
that
two
time.
national championships.
No ranked road win, and they've never won in Omaha, and so it just felt like something had to give, and it fell in Creighton's favor for a historic night in Omaha. I found it. I found it. So I woke up. My sister had. I remember my sister called me. I got off the phone with her. I was about to go grab food, and I looked at the weather app, and it was like 58 or something. And I looked out my window. There were no clouds in sight whatsoever. And so I texted my girlfriend. I said, "I'm telling you right now at 12:26 p.m. that it's too nice of a day in Omaha. Creighton is beating UConn tonight."
Wow.
It
That,
just felt like too perfect of a day. It really did. Um, then I guess by the end of the night it was. So
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. I like your point about that Creighton didn't do anything
yeah,
special because, and
no,
I did watch that game and yeah, I agreed with you. I mean, the Creighton has chucked up a lot of three-pointers all season, and they were just on a heater the other night. Stephen
yeah.
Ashworth, like that
Oh
was,
my goodness.
I've gotten used. I've seen that performance, several times this season out of Keisei Tominaga. That
Yeah,
type of just
yeah,
like when he crosses half court, he's in range and he is feeling it, and he was huge in that game and just the past couple. It feels like he's kind
yeah.
of found his stride. He seems a lot more comfortable with what Creighton expects him to do, where he's at in the offense.
Yeah, I think he's averaging like 19 points over the last seven, which that's the player they recruited. When they went in the portal and they got Stephen Ashworth and they saw this kid from Utah State, they saw a volume scorer who could hit from anywhere on the floor. And so it took him a little bit of time to kind of nestle into this role because with Baylor Shireman, Trey Alexander, Ryan Kalkbrenner, like nobody's really a volume scorer on this team. Not on a nightly basis. Trey Alexander's going to get his, Baylor's going to get his. They're gonna run the offense through like inside out. They're going to try and get it to Ryan Kalkbrenner, let him kick it. So those guys are going to get their touches, and you knew they were going to. In Stephen Ashworth, exactly as you said, he's kind of found his like perfect role in all of that. I ironically enough, I really think it started that first UConn matchup. He didn't play particularly well offensively that night, except for the final few minutes, which yeah, UConn was already up by 20. Let's not forget that. Um, so at the time we took it with a grain of salt. But what he did in those final few minutes, getting to the rim, defending better, it seemed like something clicked for him, and that's been the case ever since, really. But yeah, that was Tominaga-esque, I think. Um, 13 straight points for the Jays. I mean, that was stuff that you'd expect to hear on a Wednesday night when Nebraska beats Indiana on the road.
Nice transition. Um, yeah. Yeah. I think you used this word just a few minutes ago, but Nebraska blitzed Indiana last night. Tominaga, you knew he was feeling it a few minutes in when he got the ball on the fast break, and instead of going to the basket, went
Yeah.
Ali Farouk Manesh on everyone and pulled
Yeah.
it back to the corner for a three. Then he had a step back on the next possession, and Indiana was doing everything it could, like we've seen teams do all year, to try to deny him the ball. Trey Galloway did a pretty good job in the second half. I think Tominaga only hit two in the second half after he
Yeah.
scored 18 in the first, but it also used a lot of energy. You saw it in the last minutes. Nebraska got some cuts to the basket, just because Galloway had spent the entire half
Yeah.
chasing Tominaga around and staying up on him. But yeah, that was the performance Nebraska needed on the road, at least in the first half. That was
Yeah. Yeah.
they went up 20 in the first half, uh, scored the first 2 points in the second half too. And then I think the run was 20-3 for Indiana. Got the deficit down to 3 points. And the best comparison I could come up with last night was like if Nebraska men's basketball was a TV show, the viewers would be watching that and being like, okay, like find a different plot line. Like you keep recycling this one, this road game collapse thing. Like find some different storylines to work into the main plot. That's what it felt like last night.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
but
It was like midway through season 14 of Grey's Anatomy, and you're just like, man, we can only watch so many surgeries, you know?
yeah. The writers were just out of ideas at that point. Like, what if we had him blow a lead on the road again? Would people forget about the last time they? But yeah, unlike previous times, and the subtle brilliance of the writing on this television show, they reversed it at the end, and Nebraska didn't lose its composure. Settled back in. Bryce Williams played like a dude pissed off in the second half,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Jamarcus Lawrence too was the standout. He was huge in that game. In that game, it's been a real kind of rocky season for Lawrence. He was the starting point guard for the first 20 or so games. He now comes off the bench, and there's been such a noticeable difference in his demeanor and the way he plays, and he looks more confident, more comfortable, more aggressive. He looks like he's found his spot coming off the bench. He's had 19 had some I think 6 boards, 5 assists, one of them just a rocket of a pass like around someone into Jawan Gary for an easy layup when
It's
Nebraska
clean.
really needed it. That was his best performance of the year, and it was what Nebraska needed.
I always find that interesting when you kind of have a starter who is, I don't want to say talent wise, but role, the fourth or fifth guy, and you just know it. But when it's somebody like a point guard, you can put them with the second unit and say, this is yours. Like this is your unit. And that's kind of what it seemed like they've done at times with Lawrence. Tominaga needs a breather, whenever that happens. Tominaga needs a breather. Boom, you have a different option. You know that you get to Minneapolis and Wisconsin is looking to get their get back, and they're going to double Keisei Tominaga with the game on the line. Okay, well, you have another ball handler you can rely on. So yeah, that's kind of like, I always view that interesting. Different teams, different coaches view it different, obviously. But yeah, why not give a guy like that who was good enough to command your offense for 20 games? Why not give him those same, that same kind of leeway, if you will, in maybe a better position to do so coming off the bench? So that's big, man. Depth is everything when you get into March. If you can hit shots, defend just a little bit, and you have enough depth to kind of play that many games over so few days, you're probably going to be in a good position. And so being able to bring Lawrence off the bench is obviously huge in that.
Yeah, and I think we really saw Nebraska's depth last night. Rink Mast was basically a non-factor on the
Yeah,
offensive end, and he's
yeah.
been probably Nebraska's most consistent, reliable guy all season, and that they were able to go on the road and win a game with him not at his best. You see there are guys who can step up. Jawan Gary had a solid game. Obviously, we talked about Keisei and Bryce Williams. Just a lot of different contributions. Leading to a win that Nebraska really, really needed. I know I wrote about this last week. Nobody has gone to the tournament in the 68 team era without winning a game on the road in conference
Yeah.
play. So Nebraska now has a path that would not be unprecedented over the past 13, 14 years.
No, yeah. And this is probably a good way to just bring up the tournament, because now they sit at the morning after, they sit at 43rd in the net. we had talked a couple of weeks ago, maybe last week, that I covered the bubble somewhat extensively last year. Oklahoma State was on the bubble for what felt like an eternity. And it feels like those early 40s, like 42, 43, that is the cutoff for the net rankings anyways. Now your resume, that'll all affect, I'm not the selection committee, but when you look at net teams, usually it's that 42 to 43 is the cutoff. The problem you run into if you continue to straddle that line is if you get a bid stealer.
Yeah.
In a league that, if I don't know, if St. John's defends the Garden and wins the Big East tournament, they could steal Nebraska's bid. So that's kind of the line you teeter. All of that to say, you have to keep putting together road wins, and especially defending the vault over the next 2.5 weeks of the regular season, the last 2.5 weeks of the regular season. But they're in a position to be in a position, I think, which is what you want this time of year, is to just give yourself a chance. And the Huskers certainly have one.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, that's as long as we're on the topic, what does beating UConn do for Creighton's outlook? I think where they were did Lenardi have them up to the 3 line the other day?
Yeah, he had them at 11th. So that would have been what, the second to last 3 seed.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is after last night's games. I don't think Lenardi's put one out.
No,
today.
I checked this morning.
Yeah, I don't think he's put one out today. But yeah, he had him like right there, like low end 3 seed. But I think, we do our tournament projection kind of bracketology, and I put in my take yesterday that I think they've solidified themselves as the top 4 seed. Creighton has, I mean, barring an epic collapse, which I think would, in the selection committee's eyes, still be fine given the quality of opponents they play the rest of the way. But barring a just collapse we have not seen from this team, they're going to be a top 4 seed easily. Now the win over number 1 UConn gives you a little bit more merit, because we all know how topsy-turvy college basketball has been this year. That number 1 spot is not easy to hang on to. And UConn did it for 6 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever it was. And so UConn is damn good to say. I think anybody who, has sniffed college basketball this year probably knows that. So beating that team, the reigning, defending national champs, in that fashion, you could, in theory, with a little bit of help, make a push for a 2 seed. It would take a lot. I'm not saying Creighton's a 2 seed. Automatic, just given to them. It would take a lot. They have to win out, maybe, or for sure beat Marquette at least, to get another one of those like seed line jumping wins. But they, like Nebraska, in an entirely different end of the spectrum, are in a position to be in a position.
Yeah.
So that's in a Jays fan perfect world, they win out. They sneak in as the 8 overall seed. They get to pick where they're going. That'd be the perfect world for Creighton. I think they'll probably end up right on that 3 seed line. But who knows?
Yeah. College basketball.
Yeah, man. Yeah. People, I'd be remiss if I did not bring this up on this week's episode. I don't think we talked about it last week when
I think so, no.
when kind of everything swirled. So Greg McDermott has addressed the Ohio State rumors. People can make of them what you will. Whether you think it's bogus, whether you think it's not, whatever. But Greg McDermott addressed them. He was on I want to get this right. He was on the Zach Gelb podcast with CBS Sports, I believe. And he just point blank period asked McDermott, you've been linked to Ohio State, is Creighton your last job, essentially? And McDermott said, let's see, I want to get the exact quote. He said, never say never. It was a tough choice to turn down Ohio State in 2017. That whole saga, chronicle, episode, whatever you want to call it. I think that's probably pretty well documented. But yeah, let's say never say never, that it was tough to turn it down. But here's the exact quote. I've always said that if I had my choice, it would be to end my career at Creighton. Wouldn't it be his choice?
I would imagine.
And if it's not his choice, I don't know what we're doing here. Yeah. You cannot, if he wants to stay, you cannot let Greg McDermott leave.
Yeah.
Now, there's behind the scenes stuff. There's whatever, there's stuff that we all don't see. And that's good and dandy, You cannot let Greg McDermott leave, I think. Rarely. We see it every off season. Rarely do you get a guy who is as committed to a program as he has been to Creighton.
Yeah.
Now, I understand he entertained the Ohio State job, like to the point where he had to turn it down, or however that played out in 2017. But he's assuredly had offers since then. Teams have reached out to him, I'm sure, every off season, and he's still here. He's still in Omaha. He seemingly wants to be in Omaha, and I don't see a reason that he shouldn't be, unless he doesn't, unless he change of heart, whatever. But like, if Greg McDermott wants to be in Omaha, they need to keep Greg McDermott in Omaha.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, but I'll say it on February 22nd, if I had to take a crack, if this is a massive if in my mind because of everything I just said, but if they were going to, obviously Ohio State's in the conversation, right? And I read an ESPN thing earlier that they didn't say like, oh yes, like he's a candidate here, but they just spun the tires on Louisville, just with the NIL that Louisville has. They need, and they will be looking for, a program rebuilder, because they are in a bad place. Louisville basketball is in a bad place right now.
Bad place.
Bad place. And McDermott obviously did what he did. They kind of caught lightning in a bottle and had a trove of success when he first got here, when they were going from the Valley and then the Big East, and really ever since. And yeah, so I just, that'd be interesting too. But again, if he wants to be here, you have to find the way. Is it, I don't know, is it a contract extension? Is it a car? Is it, I don't know. I think I've heard that he has, he can golf anywhere in Omaha. Can he go, would you make it that he can golf anywhere in Lincoln too? I don't know, but you've got to do something, man. You can't let Greg McDermott leave.
Yeah, absolutely agree.
Yeah.
Yeah,
man.
What's ahead? Creighton's got St. John's coming up. Is that right?
Yep. Got St. John's on Sunday in the Garden. So that'll be fun. I don't know if anybody knows what version of St. John's they'll get.
I think St. John's and Indiana are in like a dead heat for worst vibes of the college basketball season.
Yes. Detroit Mercy at least cares.
That was one of my favorite moments of the entire season. Detroit Mercy won its first game and one guy stormed the court. That was incredible.
It was the only guy in attendance. Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. I have no clue. I do know that it will Creighton will not get the version of St. John's that they got in January. The St. John's that came into Omaha and hit mid-range after mid-range and scrapped and clawed and had a chance at the buzzer but didn't capitalize on it. I don't think they get that team, but I also have no clue. Did you see Rick Pitino's comments over the weekend?
Oh, of course.
Yeah. So yeah, they lost last weekend. I don't even remember to who or what it was because that quickly engulfed anything that had happened right before then. And he had just kind of said he unloaded, but in there was, man, we had to recruit these guys last second, like da 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 da. He's too slow. He's too slow. He's physically weak. He's too slow. And it was like, oh my goodness. And but then they beat Georgetown oh so barely, 90-85 on Wednesday, and he's like, yeah, I apologize to my players, da 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 da. And the players are like, yeah, we're all good. We know he cares about us. And so I just have no clue what the state of St. John's is right now, mindset wise. But I don't know. I think for Creighton, it's just about not. I mean, you saw this. It's about not getting up after beating the number one team.
Yeah.
Like
Absolutely.
as hungry as you were to beat number one, you have to go do that at St. John's. You have to be as hungry to beat St. John's as you were to beat UConn. Um, yeah. Otherwise, we would sit here and say on next week's episode that in hindsight, the UConn win feels a bit tarnished. Now it won't be, all things considered, how could it be?
Yeah.
But I you can't go lay an egg right after.
Yeah.
What do you obviously experienced that with Nebraska this year? What did that do for them? Being so up after beating Purdue and then dropping the next one. What did that look like from your perspective?
It was interesting because it's hard to tell if that was Iowa. Weird game. Nebraska is down 17-2 at one
Yeah.
point, takes the lead in the second half, and then gets just run out of the gym in the last 10
Yeah.
minutes. But it was interesting because it's hard to tell if that game was, hangover from beating Purdue a few days earlier, or if it was just the road demons that we saw all year long
Yeah.
up until last night. I know Nebraska has said, and you don't know how much of this is just kind of in retrospect.
Right.
Has said that they wish they had handled things a little better
Yeah.
um after beating Purdue. I remember there was a game a couple days later. I forget which exactly when it was, but Fred Hoiberg post game said, and after the game, no more. We're not dumping water on anyone. There's none of that. Like with the rest of the season, it's business. We expect to
Yeah.
win. So I think again, you can make of that what you will. I think you can definitely read it as it kind of hardened them a little bit. They felt good after beating Purdue and got, kind of knocked back down to earth, and that
Yeah.
kind of set the tone for how Nebraska collectively, kind of wants to handle itself after wins. We'll see it again in a couple days. I'm sure
Yeah.
they're feeling pretty good as they should, winning a game on the road after losing the first seven. Big Ten road wins don't grow on trees regardless
No.
of who you're playing. And to get the first one, that was a major stepping stone for an NCAA tournament bid. I'm sure they felt good last night coming home, but
Yeah.
that'll be the next. I think we'll see that again, and Nebraska is going to um have
Hey, what
that
do they
on
got
its
this
mind
weekend?
again. They got Minnesota this weekend. Um,
The revenge.
the revenge, yeah. It's Nebraska has 4 games left. All 4 opponents, the Huskers held a double-digit lead on at one point. when they played. They
And
were
lost?
2-2 in those games.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so and
Yeah.
that's the two games they have left at home are Minnesota and Rutgers, and they were up double digits on both of them on the road. Couldn't hang on to it. So we'll see round two. I think the Minnesota game coming up on Sunday. That like Minnesota's a pretty solid team, and win that game, and Nebraska's damn near in the tournament with
Yeah.
3 games left, I think.
Yeah. You hear my cat in the back? He said, I think this is the second straight week we've had an Ovi
Yeah.
guest appearance on the Half Court Press Pod. See, exactly. Okay. Minnesota. Okay, that's the tough thing because it wouldn't even be quad one because
No.
Minnesota's 73rd in the net. That's so tough. That's so tough.
No, what's interesting
But
is Minnesota and Ohio State, Nebraska's next two opponents, are both like on the edge of it's going to be on borderline quad one, quad two when Nebraska goes to Columbus. It'll be borderline quad two, quad three when Minnesota comes to Nebraska. Thing is, Minnesota and Ohio State play each other tonight, I think. Yeah, tonight. So that I think there's a good chance that determines, the tiers of the
yeah,
next 2 games Nebraska
yeah.
plays.
I still think, even metrically aside, I still think these two games are oh so important for them just because to see how far they have come. They were good enough to have double digit leads over both of these teams, over all of these teams. And to not be able to close, like imagine how differently we're talking about Nebraska right now if they are 21-6.
Yeah.
Like that they win both of those, they hang on for double digit or they hang on for wins on the road after leading by double digits and they're 21-6 and the tournament isn't really a question of if, it's where.
Yeah.
So, but still, I think, again, morally, it'd be really good for them to just have a double digit lead again and be able to keep it this time.
Double digit leads are generally encouraged when you're playing basketball. That's
Those are
the numbers guys say, the analytics people say those are good to have when you're playing in a basketball game.
yeah, I we'll have to go to the writers' room and workshop that one. The mid-season finale for the Huskers. This is like we've dropped 8 episodes of your favorite of the final season of your favorite series on Netflix, and we've said you got to wait a month for the last 4 episodes.
Yeah.
Sorry about it.
Yeah, Nebraska's
That's
got a week between its second to last game and its last game, which is weird.
really, yeah. I
Yeah.
think Creighton does too. Yeah, they get
Okay.
Marquette next Saturday, and then they have a week off, and then they go to Villanova to end the regular season. So yeah, I don't know if that's common or what, or if that's just kind of luck of the draw on both of their ends. But that's a good time to get some rest. That I
Yeah.
do know.
Yeah. Gear up. It'll be conference tournament time. John, I think, I can't say for certain, but one week, no, I was about to say 1 week from today it will be March, but it won't be because it was going to be a whole thing about how if we do this on Thursday again, which we often do, our next episode will be in March, but it
That's
won't
good.
be. It will most likely still be February the next time we record
That's
an
okay.
episode. So forget
You know what?
everything I was about to say.
How many years, how many times do you get to record a podcast on February 29th?
My God, I think we have no
It,
choice now.
it just feels like for whatever reason, the opportunity only comes up once every 4 years. And it's a shame. Um, it's a shame. But March is on the horizon. I'm ready
Yeah,
for it.
it's
I'm ready.
getting
I'm ready to get to the nitty gritty.
ever so closer. Well, that was the Half Court Press podcast. We'll see you next time when it is still February. Thank you for listening.